Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling with the Future. Very special episode. I'm here with a dear friend of mine. But before I get to our guest, let me introduce you to my co-host, Dan the Man Sebastiano. How are you, Dan?
Great, Angelo. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, Dan. That's a fine-looking hat you have on.
I try. You see, I'll keep the hat collection. Going to be part of the look.
Absolutely. It's like the third new one this week. Guy's got a new hat for every show. I love it. And joining Dan tonight and joining myself is our resident filmmaker, actor, producer, writer, director, man of many hats, Mr. Marvelous himself, Mike Messier.
Glad to be here, Angelo, and we've got a very special guest. I'm looking forward to meeting him through you.
We do indeed. He is indeed a very special guest. We want to talk a little bit before we get to the good doctor in the house. We want to talk a little bit about some of the reaction we've gotten to our show from last night. Of course, we did our Owen Hart tribute last night, and it's I got to say, it's been very widely received and very positive. And so if you guys are getting any feedback, let me know. What are people saying?
So far on my end, people are just they're thumbs upping the show. I think on shared around the Facebook circles and all the wrestling groups that I'm in. And I think people are just kind of thinking about Owen Hart right now because of the dark side of the ring. And so I think what we provided is kind of a starting point or warm-up for people to watch that dark side and really honor Owen Hart, one of the greatest wrestlers of a lot of our histories as fans.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be interesting, the feedback, once people watch the full episode, because we went an hour and 37 minutes by my count. So I think it's going to be interesting, the feedback. But I mean, I think that really speaks for the legacy and the love that people have for Owen Hart.
It really does. Dan, how about you, Dan? Are you getting any kind of feedback?
Well, like Mike said, the general thumbs up, but also if you look at the reaction so far on social media, that's easily one of our fastest received videos so far, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. I'm very pleased with it. And by the way, that episode of Dark Side of the Ring, locally here in New Jersey, airs tonight, I believe at 10 o'clock. I think 10 o'clock.
Yeah, on the Vice network.
Vice. Vice Land, or is it just Vice, Mike?
I think it's just Vice. And
Vice.
Here's a little trick for those of you that don't have cable TV or don't have Vice, like on YouTube TV, they don't have Vice. You can go to the Vice website and see the show. And you might have to sit through a couple of commercials online, but you can still see all the dark side of the ring on their website.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, I have a very, very special guest. I've known this guy for probably 30 years at least.
Yes.
And have known of him longer than that. He is a legitimate Wrestling Hall of Famer. His career spans, and it's hard to imagine this, but 45 years in wrestling. How the hell he survived, we're going to find out. He is a man who is a wrestler, manager, owner, promoter, a training school owner, and has worked with some of the biggest names in the business, including Nikolai Volkov, the Iron Sheik, Hulk Hogan, superstar Billy Graham. The list goes on and on. So without further ado, the good doctor himself is in the house, my friend, Doc Diamond. Doc, welcome to the show.
Angelo, thank you for having me. Danny, Mike,
brother.
thank you for having me, gentlemen.
You're quite welcome. You know what, Doc? I've known you a long time, but you know there's one thing I never knew about you was how the hell you got started in wrestling.
How I got started was, believe it or not, was working security. Because at that time I was promoting bands like Molly Hatchet, Blue Magic, Dennis Edwards and the Temptations, Lynn, which I did over to McGuire Air Force Base, rented out a hangar over there.
Yeah.
And through that, I met John Milligan.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then through John, he did a show up to CYO in Trenton. And that's how I actually, later on, I met Larry Sharpe. Terry Funk was there. Mike Sharpe was there. Trying to think of some other guys, but it really don't matter. But that's when I basically got started back in, be like 78.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You, Doc, you mentioned you got started managing rock bands. There was another guy who I'm sure you knew at the time who started out managing rock bands and various entertainment acts.
Yes.
And made the foray into wrestling is our mutual friend Rob Russin.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, Rob is his claim to fame for everybody who doesn't know that name, Rob Russin. And by the way, he's going to be on the show, Doc. I'm getting him on the show.
Great.
He agreed to come on. Rob Russin is the guy who discovered Diamond Dallas Page.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
That's his claim to fame.
Yeah. Page worked for me over to, I had a show at the Skate Zone, the Flyers Skate Zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, he was.
You
on
know
my
what's
card.
funny, Doc?
What's that?
It's right around the corner from my house.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It
okay.
really is.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
10 minutes away.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And Rob, of course, his other claim to fame, maybe infamy or fame, depending on how you look at it, was he brought the world the first Elvis impersonator. So,
Really?
yeah, he sure did. The Big L.
Okay.
The Big L. Larry Seft, the Big L.
It's I got to ask him because it sounds familiar. How long ago maybe was this?
1976.
Okay.
Yeah, Elvis was still alive.
We'll have to ask him if he ever worked in Brothers 3. Used to be a lounge in a bar outside of Mount Holly. And I was wondering because a gentleman, I think that was what he went by, and he did the Elvis.
Oh,
you know,
about the Dragon's Inn.
I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, it was called the Dragon's Inn. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the place, Doc. Yeah,
Okay.
in Mount Holly, the Dragon's Inn.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the place. Yep,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
Was. So, how the hell did you get started? I mean, you started with rock bands, and what was your like real introduction into full time, where you said to yourself, "I'm going to leave the bands behind,
Right.
and I'm going to go balls to the walls with this wrestling deal."
82 when Larry Sharpe talked to me.
Walk me
And I
through
went-
that, because you and I both knew Larry.
Sure. Love Larry to death.
Good guy.
Got started with Buddy Rogers was there. It was Buddy Rogers, Charlie Fulton,
As my
and
buddy.
me. Yeah. Irene still gets a hold of me once in a while, Charlie's wife. And then, like I said, it was Buddy Rogers.
I miss
And
him.
then, yeah. Always dressed nice. Always. I wish I could have his tan like he did all year long. Oh, man.
Yeah,
And,
I'll tell you what, man. Buddy Rogers, you know, we were talking about Buddy. I had Bill Apter on the show, Doc, on Thursday.
Right.
And we talked about Bruno and we talked about Buddy.
Right.
You know, Buddy always had that cigar in his mouth calling everybody Pally. Hey, Pally, come here,
Right.
Pally. Yeah, everybody was Pally. He was a great guy. And you remember his bar in Camden? Do you remember Buddy's bar in Camden?
No, I'm trying to think of it, man. I'm really happy.
It was called.
I mean, Larry Sharpe, I don't remember too much for that because Larry Sharpe might have drugged me there.
You know what? If you knew Larry Sharpe, it wasn't out of the question. Absolutely, Larry was a character. Well, let's talk about Larry. You and I both knew Larry, yeah, and Dennis Carluzzo, and yeah. So talk about Larry Sharpe. Let's talk about Larry a little bit.
What I liked about Larry was he told you how it was. Okay, he wasn't like a lot of the schools the way I would want to run it too. And like Hillbilly Cousin Luke, which was a dear friend of mine, Gene Pettit.
Oh, yeah.
You always look for a guy that was big, and in wrestling, you didn't get a guy that weighed 150 pounds or 100,
Yeah.
180 pounds. You know what I mean? Not that I want to discourage them from their dreams, right? Like that, because who am I to say to them when I have them come to my school? Who am I to say to them that they can't make it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well,
And
you know what,
schools aren't-
Doc? It's funny that you're going there, because my co-host Dan the Man and I, we had this conversation not too long ago about the way wrestlers look.
Yeah.
And
They all
remember,
look the
Dan,
same.
we did a whole show on
Right.
how wrestlers look today, and how the lack of training, and the fact that you owned the school is really special interest to Dan, and he's got a lot of questions for you.
Sure.
So
Well,
what I'm going to do, Doc, is I'm going to turn it over to Dan and let him talk to you a little bit.
Okay.
Dan, you got it, brother.
All right, Doc, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. It's
To-
nice
to-
talking to you. Go ahead, man.
To go off of what Angelo was saying, we've talked a lot about the evolution of the modern wrestler, the look of the modern wrestler, and I'm curious, because doing some, looking up research in your name prior to the show, you're running the wrestling school. Have you noticed an evolution in the look of like the student, and maybe you could give us some insight on why you're smaller, for modern comparison's sake, someone like a Young Bucks, for example, who are literally just backyard friends who decided to wrestle. Why someone like that decides, like where does the evolution come from? You think you could shed some light on that?
Sure. Well, not just that. They all want to do the high fly moves, and they make it look so. I mean, you can't keep doing a high spot after a high spot after a high spot. They don't know how to wrestle anymore. I could watch Abdul the Butcher, which he's worked for me many times, which I had against Manny Fernandez. You watch Abby work, and most of the time he's out of the ring and he's resting. When he gets up in the ring, he's resting. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just the way, you do what you got to do and then get in there. But these guys want to do high spot after high spot. And then if they're young, they want to, 2 weeks out, they're still in the school, they're asking about a belt. When am I going to get a chance for a belt? 2 weeks to a month in the school. Everybody wants a belt.
That's crazy.
There's no characters anymore. Everybody looks the same.
He said it. He said it, Dan.
He did.
He said it, Dan. Oh my God, I love you, Doc. You're the best.
Everybody is.
How long have I been saying that, you guys? Mikey, how long
A long
have I
time.
been saying?
You've been saying that a lot.
Doc, I harp on it every week. Where are the fucking characters?
Yes.
Where did they go?
Yes. I mean, the Iron Sheik,
Drives me
Nikolai
nuts.
Volkov, King Kong Bundy. I mean, you go on and on. Johnny Rods, Honky Tonk Man, Tito Santana. They all worked for me or helped me out in some way. And there's just no characters anymore. And not just that, like I said, they all look the same and dress the same.
Right.
I mean, you can't tell who's the heel and who's the baby face anymore.
Here's
really
the
can't.
problem I have, Doc. As much as I think it's a good thing that the WWE has a performance center, right?
Right.
The problem I have is they're all cookie cutter.
Yes.
You know what I mean, Doc?
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Mikey, expand on that for me.
Well, I want to go to his Doc's point about the guys trying to be, cruiserweight champions when they first come in there. I think that maybe that's something to do with the popularity of like the Rey Mysterio Juniors and the Juventud Guerreros on Nitro around that era. 20 years later, we're seeing that a lot of those young kids that maybe in prior generations would be too small to be professional wrestlers. Maybe these smaller kids got inspired by the Rey Mysterio types, and the bigger, tougher guys are inspired by UFC, by Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell and Ken Shamrock, and maybe that's a generational divide or the generational gap in all of this.
Right, but what happened to the guys with wearing actual wrestling boots and actually a uniform? With actual tights and That's the problem. I mean, you're coming in with
Old
dungarees
school.
on.
Old.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
if I may,
Sure.
to continue, kind of expand on that point too. You talked about all these guys you've booked. There's a big trend today. I mentioned the Young Bucks earlier. They're one. Kenny Omega is another big name. These are people who were not.
Speaking of big names, guess who's here? Hold on. All right.
Bye-bye.
My friend here. Where'd he go?
All right, who booked the run-in?
Is it Mr. Rosser?
Oh, yeah, baby. Hold on.
It's like Lethal Lottery.
Yeah. Well, it was Davey O'Hannon calling in. Hold on a minute.
Oh,
Hold
Dave.
on, you guys.
Okay.
We'll get him back. But anyway, go ahead, Dan.
What I was saying is, you have some of the names like I mentioned, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. You know, these guys who were not trained in a school the way you would run, where these are just backyard wrestlers, and you watch them perform, and they're clearly just people who are they look like they're kids pretending to wrestle.
Right.
I'm wondering, do you have any experience having to train some of these bad habits away, or booking or dealing with these guys who are for lack of a better term, think they know wrestling when they don't? They're just not.
Yeah.
I mean, they're backyard stunt show performers who decided to wrestle and somehow got a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they come in and they think they're gonna make $1 million, and I mean, sometimes you got to do things for free, and I understand that because I've done plenty of charities. I mean, I've done Make-A-Wish, Sunshine Foundation, Children's Hospital. I mean, I've done so many, and some of them don't think they got to go do a gig like that for free. Sometimes you just got to do it. And guys forgot about 8x10s and get your advertisement out there. I know this is like when I worked for Savoldi's, okay?
Yeah.
I worked for Savoldi's, and we were doing TV, and when I managed you. It wasn't like, pretended and got outside the ring. I mean, I got you booked, and I usually took you there.
Yeah.
When I was working for Savoldi's, when they had the IWCCW, and then they moved it into ICW. I guess Tony Rumble was there first with the IWCCW, and everybody would call me for the midgets and the little people. I guess politically correct now, but
Right.
Yeah, right.
if you put little people on the poster, I mean, believe me, those guys like Frankie Third Degree Burns I managed, and Martine and the Prankster, like when the Batman movie was popular, didn't use the Joker, couldn't usually use the Joker, so I called him the Prankster, but he dressed just like the Joker, stuff like that. But I actually, like, if you look at Chief Thunder Mountain, except for the headdress, most of that stuff I made myself.
Yeah.
Same thing a Hoss is wearing. I mean, if you look at them as a tag, I mean, they look like they belong together and they're tagged. Tony Rumble used to always get on it because Cowboy and Indian together, stuff like that in the ring. But it's just.
All right, you guys talk. Go ahead.
And I thought that would take it slipped on me here. Mike, well,
keep going, Doc. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good, Doc.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And trying to get to what I really want. Like I said, they think they're going to make $1 million. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going back to
Doc,
guys that are
I got a
smaller.
friend of yours here, Doc.
Davey?
Davey. He was just here.
This is like Papa Shingo at WrestleMania 8 at the end of the show.
He was just here.
Get to the ring, Papa Shingo. You got to break up the 3 count.
He was just here.
Doc, I got to say real quick, as we
Yes,
have
sir.
this, I knew Tony Rumble. For those that don't know who Tony Rumble is, he was a Class A gentleman. He
Yes.
always wore a bandana. He was called the Boston Bad Boy.
Oh, yep.
I don't was he trained by Kowalski, by Killer Kowalski?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Tony was kind of the heir apparent to Killer Kowalski in that New England pro wrestling scene up until about I think Tony passed away in 2001 or 2002.
I think it was 2002.
Yeah, and he was a great guy. So anyone that knew Tony Rumble, he could go on camera. He was actually featured, I think, in the first WCW World War III pay-per-view, that Battle Royal thing. Not because Tony was a huge name on the national wrestling scene, but because Kevin Sullivan really had a fondness for Tony Rumble. And Tony would help get some of the best talent out of New England to the national wrestling scene, whether it was WWF or WCW, ECW. Tony was a conduit for a lot of great things. So as a New Englander at heart here, I do want to pay my respects to Tony Rumble and thank you for being a good friend of his.
Sure.
We're going to do this old school, Doc. Hold on. We're going to do
actually, I mean, he was a character. I mean,
Hey,
that's
Davey.
what,
I got Doc Diamond here.
I can't hear him.
First class.
Oh, there he is.
Go ahead, Doc.
Hey, Davey. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Doc. How are you? It's been quite some time since I've seen you.
Yes, sir. When I was talking to Angelo, I just said, you know, one of the people that have helped me in this business, and not just helped me. I mean, I never said you were just so loyal, and
Well,
it's hard to.
flatter, and then, you know what? The people that listen to this, and there are a ton of people that listen to Wrestling with the Future. But what they have to understand is, and I can only speak from the time that I was involved, so the 70s and the 80s, we had a pretty closed shop. Wrestling was different. You know, I'm not involved now, so I don't know what it's like. But it was closed to the sense if somebody was an outsider,
Yes.
they had a real tough time getting in. So what is an absolute testament to Doc Diamond is he gained the trust and the affection of the guys that were in the business. You know, guys like Nikolai Volkov and Jimmy Snuka and Larry Sharpe and Bundy. You know, myself, of course. Manny Soto and Dick Worley made an appearance for Doc. Let me tell you something, that was unheard of. You didn't get those guys to go down and go appear for somebody if they weren't completely trusting. And the reason was, like I said, we had such a little closed group there, closed industry. We never made a joke about what we did for a living, so we were really careful about who we let in our house. And Doc Diamond was just a natural to be there.
Thank you, Davey. And I'll never forget you, Davey, telling me that, as a matter of fact, I heard in a couple of conversations about guys going around calling people marks. Well, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those people. There's no such thing.
Yeah, well, no doubt. I just never used the word marked.
Right, that's what I mean. That's what I learned from you, that, you know, when you told me that you didn't believe in that, and you know, and I followed that too. When you mentioned a couple times to me and mentioned it to people in front of me, you know what I mean? And it's true. I mean, they're your fans. They're the ones paying at the door to see you. I mean,
Exactly right.
I'll tell you what, if it's any consolation, everybody smartened up is in the audience now, and all the marks are in the business.
Right.
Yeah.
You might be right about that.
I don't know if that's a good thing or
Maybe
not,
it
though.
seems that way.
Yeah. I mean, I just happened to. My son called me up and said to me, "You got to watch something on YouTube about an. It was, I guess, it was an independent. I'm sure it was an independent wrestling show somewhere. Don't know where." He said, "You got to just take a look at this," and I looked, and there was probably a good 20 or 30 people in this audience, and this guy got up on a ladder outside the ring, and I said to myself, "Well, okay, well, he's watching too much television, this guy," and he went to jump off the ladder, except the ladder moved, and he splattered himself all over the ring apron, which I thought was kind of amusing. And I said to myself, well, yep, he's in the wrong place. He ought to be in one of those seats watching. And you know what? That's the other thing that comes to mind, because I saw the people that Doc Diamond had working for him, and nobody like that. Nobody made a joke of the business. Nobody cheapened it at all. He had a quality operation. And that's also a testament to him.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that.
Davey, I thank you so much, Davey, for doing the old favor for the doc. I really appreciate it, and you're a good friend of the show, and you've been here a few times in the past, and you're going to be here many more times in the future.
Well, I hope so. It's
oh, absolutely.
We can tell us old guys. We can tell who is a friend of the business as we knew it and as we treated it. And there's people that we just don't get involved in, or get involved with. Like I said, Angelo, certainly, you're the gold standard for the podcast, and the way you treat the talent, and the way you treat the business. And Doc Diamond, like I said, it took a whole lot for somebody to gain our trust and to be let in. And Doc Diamond had no problem with that. Just look at the names, and I exclude myself. Just look at the names that he was close with. And, when you say Nikolai and Dick Worley and Manny Soto and Snuka and Larry Sharpe and, many, many more, that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't such a quality person. So
that's absolutely right.
Wow.
So my pleasure. Absolutely. You guys, feel free to contact me anytime you want.
And by the way, Davey, our friend Bill Apter says to say hi to you. I spoke to him the other night. I had him on the show the other night, and of course he did his famous Bruno impression.
He does good Bruno.
Yes, he does.
and he does really good Terry Funk too.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, because he and I kid around. When I see him or he sees me, instead of saying hello to him, I say, "Well, you yellow egg-sucking dog," and that's what Terry Funk used to say to him all the time. He'd say, "After you egg-sucking dog, you." So anyway, good guy.
God,
and he's another guy that was in that group that we just protected that little thing that we had going. So.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
So
maybe
in our next life, the territories will come back and they'll remember us guys.
I got news for you, brother. We got a whole show coming up about the territories.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. That was the best time in the business.
Well, and that's why I definitely want you for that one, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm going to have you and Manny Fernandez on.
Oh, how about that? Yeah, Manny was a good hand.
Yeah.
I never worked with him, and when he was in, I apologize for Doc. Sometimes wrestlers start talking and they talk too much.
Okay.
My wife always says, "Could you make it the short version or whatever story it's going to be?"
No, I have a podcast. We like the long versions.
Manny was I think with Turner and WCW, and I had gotten a call from Dylan, who was booking for them,
Yeah.
and JJ booked me. But I was working WCW, the North Towns up here, Roanoke, Richmond, when they came up to Baltimore. I was doing that. So Manny and I never actually crossed paths.
Right.
We never crossed paths. But we had a mutual friend, Bruiser Brody, who someday Manny and I'll talk about. Yeah, he was like.
I'll tell you what, Davey, we actually were really, really fortunate to have Bruiser's wife on the show, Barbara.
Yeah, I heard that. I met her a couple of times, and the one time I apologize, Doc, I'm talking too much here.
No, Davey, I love you, man. Go ahead.
I met Barbara one time. I don't remember where it was, but she knew who I was because Frank and I were close, and we traveled together down in the Amarillo territory. And when I stayed in Amarillo is when he got booked up here in the WWF for his run with Bruno. And I promise this will be the last little story, that I'll hang up and let you guys talk. Anyway, I finished in Texas, and they brought me back up for a garden show, and it happened to be Brody's first garden show. And he was just a nervous wreck. He's working with Bruno in the garden. Doesn't get any better than that. And he said to me, can you take a look for me? Tell me what this looks like out here. What's it going to be? Because he had known I'd worked in the garden several times. So I looked out. The garden was always filled. It was a good arena to work in. And I went back. I said, Frank, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's 10 minutes before showtime, and there's not even a half a house here. And he looked like he was going to faint. I mean, of course, it was filled.
Yeah.
It was filled, but he was nervous about drawing a house, so I figured I'd help him out a little bit and tell him that it was half a house, that he didn't draw flies.
You lied, Davey O'Hannon, you lied.
he actually went into the bathroom and threw up.
Oh, my God.
So that was great. Mission accomplished. That was great. And after...
I love them. I love them.
Yeah, I left, and I saw him. We used to stay in the Edison Hotel on 47th Street, and there was a bar across the street called the Savoy. Yeah. And here he comes, and he looked down the bar and saw me sitting there, and he said, "You son of a bitch!" And here he came. I had to duck out the back. And get out of there. He was gonna whack me. He said, "You got me good." He said, "You got me good."
Oh, that's beautiful.
But his wife remembers him telling that story. So,
she's actually coming back on, Davey. We're doing a special tribute to wrestling wives. We're going to have Wahoo McDaniel's wife, Karen.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yeah. She's coming back. I got Barb Goodish coming back, and I've got a really super surprise that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. But let's put it this one. It's a dream come true.
Gotcha.
There's a little hint there.
I got you.
Davey, thank you so much for joining us, brother.
Well, listen, this was an honor for me to be on Doc Diamond show like this, and like I said, I'll shut up, but I can't say enough good about Doc Diamond. I really appreciate that he's my friend and always will be. Okay, guys, take care, Doc. I love you and look forward to seeing you.
Love you, Davey. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for the friendship, man.
Take care.
Davey, thank you, brother.
No problem.
Thank you so much. I'll touch base with you tomorrow, bro. Davey O'Hannon.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you watching this on video, we had to do this old school.
Yeah. That's okay.
This is what happens when technology fails you, Doc. This is what you got to do. You got to pick up the microphone and pick up the telephone and put them together. Oh, man. I'll tell you what. I know Davey O'Hannon as long as I know you, Doc. I've known him the better part of 30 years.
Yeah.
And it's funny how I met Davey. I actually met Davey, believe it or not, through Johnny Rods.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
Johnny helped me a lot. I didn't have time to answer, but I wanted to ask him how Johnny Rods was doing. If anybody heard anything or anything like that.
I can tell you what I have heard. I know he's been ill.
Right.
I know they're keeping, for lack of a better word, they're keeping kayfabe on it.
Right.
Nobody's really talking. Like, there's a handful of people who know, but just suffice it to say that he's ill right now, and we hope we all wish him the best.
Right.
That was a nice run-in from Davey O'Hannon. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I love Davey.
Yeah.
I really do. And I want to tell you what, you want to talk about getting put over by somebody, calling us the gold standard. That's pretty sweet.
Come out, Davey.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
that's
not
nice.
just that. I mean, he's a gentleman. I mean, you can't get around it. Gentleman in the business, and like I said, like I said, it came out of my mouth. Loyalty. I mean, he never asked for a dime.
I know.
When he come to a show, I mean, he picked up other people for me, and wouldn't even ask for gas money. I tried to give him gas money, and he wouldn't take it. I mean, that's what about the older guys, and then you got the guys now.
Brother, I was the same way, Doc. I want to tell you, brother, I was the same way with Larry, with Bundy, with Jimmy Snuka. None of them ever took my money. They worked my shows. They never took a dime from me.
Well, that's
how many people can say they got Jimmy Snuka to work for free? How many people? I can say that.
Right, I can say
that. Exactly. Yeah, I know you can.
Yeah,
I know
Nikolai
you can.
too. Nikolai would come up for free for me, and I said, at least take some gas money, Nick. No. And he'd actually call whoever he said he was going to work for. I guess he was going to do a double booking and just tell him I guess I don't know what story he told them, but he would come and work for me, and he worked for nothing because he said it was just I'm not trying to
what, Doc,
horn.
I've heard those stories.
Yeah, he would come up
those stories where he would cancel a paid booking and come work for you.
Yep. Just to work.
That should speak volumes. I want people watching this and listening to this on our various podcast platforms. I want you to hear what Doc is saying.
All right. And well, not just that, what they do also, Danny and Mike, is that they overprice themselves.
The wrestlers of
Doc. Exactly.
You mean the wrestlers book themselves out or price themselves out of jobs?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what Doc is saying.
Okay, Capitol Albano on one show. Capitol Albano, the Bushwhackers, Honky Tonk Man, Tito Santana, Bam Bam Bigalow. This is all one card. This is a WWF card at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And today you're lucky if you can afford one.
Yeah, I know. Right. Exactly.
I mean, because they want to outprice themselves, especially younger guys.
Yeah,
they think they can get this or that, and I'm not going to put out prices, but where I've had guys, like I said, like Tom Brandy's a good friend. And Tom would come.
I love Tommy. I mean, for those of you watching, Tom Brandy is the WWF's Salvatore Sincere, and he's also the Patriot.
Yes.
He was also Johnny Gunn in WCW, I believe, around 92.
Sure was. Yeah, Tommy's a good friend of me and Doc.
Yes.
In fact, he did that show for me. Again, another guy that never asked me for a dime. Did a show in Atlantic City, a free show he did for me for the 9/11 fund.
Okay.
Yeah, we did at the Saints Casino, Doc.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike, you got a question for Doc. The good doctor is all yours, Mike.
I do. Doc, I wanted to ask you, without me putting forth my own 2 cents too much, is when you train wrestlers and when you have trained wrestlers, do you ever talk about things like wrestling etiquette or ethics? And I guess what I'm getting at is there's been a trend on the independent scene as well that's kind of seeping into AEW, especially, and WWE to a lesser extent, of some of the wrestlers really just kind of blatantly doing silly stuff. Not Lord Alfred Hayes on TNT silly, but a wrestler will chew his gum, spit the gum at the opponent. The gum will fall to the ground, and the opponent will pick it up and put it in his mouth.
Right.
And I've seen that happen in independent shows. And then you have the Joey Ryans of the world that do really ridiculous crotch gimmicks, and you have 30 super kicks a match with the aforementioned Young Bucks. And these are things that, as a fan, I actually find offensive. And I'm wondering if guys like yourself within the business who can help mold the future of these young wrestlers, is that something that's addressed or not? And if you do address it, how do you bring it up with the young talent?
Well, it's the first thing I do is, like I said, what you're talking about, it's called respect, and there's no respect in this business anymore.
Doc.
Respect is gone. It really is. And then when guys also ask, I got students, you get a lot of the students ask you about drugs and alcohol and this, that. I would tell them, I said, listen, I judge no one, because WWE, WCW, whatever, NWA, whatever, the smallest federation, I don't care if there's one person in the audience. But when you're working for that federation or whatever, those guys will do whatever they got to do to get in the ring, because there's always somebody to step in behind them that's either just as good as they are, or better than them.
Doc,
and
I got a question for you, Doc. Following up on what Mikey was saying, when you train a guy, and you and I both know how Larry used to train.
Yes.
When you train a guy, what's the first thing when he walks in the door and he pops down his money and says, Doc, I want you to train me? What's the first thing you do?
First thing I do?
Yeah.
I get him in the ring. Nothing against, I don't want to say a bad thing about Larry, but I didn't spend so much time in the office counting the money. I made sure they actually were being trained.
Yeah, and I know what Doc is talking about. Larry spent very little time in the ring. He used to, what he used to do? Well, Doc, but for people who don't know, Larry, God rest his soul, Larry Sharpe, pretty boy Larry Sharpe, used to train guys by sitting on a chair outside the ring and say, do this and do that and do this and do that.
Not just that. I mean, I was present, like I said, I was partners with Larry, so I know, what went on, and I couldn't believe some of the things he would say. And like I said, I loved him because if he didn't like you, he told you. And I like people like, I really do. If they don't like you, tell them. If you don't like that person, don't pull their leg for a long period of time. But Larry asked somebody for $50 to train them, and he would have tryouts and charge $50 for a tryout. But then he would ask that person, can't train you. Going to keep your $50. Okay, but I think you're untrainable. Well, isn't that why he's there? To pay the $50 to get trained?
Exactly.
I mean, he didn't give, and this is a true story, didn't give the kid a time to show him, man, no bumps, no nothing. And then he goes, I can't train. It takes the $50.
Yeah.
That's what was the difference between me and Larry when we ran a school.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually our own. I mean, when I ran the school with Larry, it was a different story. I mean, Larry just was at that time, well, Buddy was until he passed away, but Larry was the senior guy there.
Oh, sure.
The head trainer was Charlie Fulton.
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes how, like I said, I love Larry, but it's just sometimes how he treated people. And I'm talking treating Charlie and stuff like that.
Sure.
I mean, you don't yell and scream at your trainer in front of the students.
Well, I'll tell you
No.
what, Doc. We got a guy here that's he's got a shit ton of questions for you. So
Sure.
I'm going to give Dan the man about the next 15, 20 minutes. And you and Dan just talk. Because he's got a lot of questions about training and schools and all that kind of stuff. Dan,
Well,
it's all yours, kid.
First, I just want to tell you, one of the first matches I had, believe it or not, was against, I wrestled with, my tag team partner was Ron Shaw.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Ron Shaw. I was working for Bob Raskin. I don't know if you remember Bob Raskin, USWA.
Oh, God, yeah, sure.
Well, that's going back some years.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it was me and Ron Shaw. Yeah, we played the Russians. We were the bad guys because it was Sergeant Slaughter and somebody else that I had a lot of respect for in the business that taught me a lot was Teddy Petty. And that time he was wrestling as a Cheetah
yeah.
Kid.
Rocco Rock. Yeah.
Yes. But at that time was
Yeah.
Cheetah Kid.
Cheetah
Yep.
Kid. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Sure was.
And
I remember Teddy. I knew Teddy very well.
yeah, Teddy was a good friend and taught me a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. That was one of my first matches. And of course I got clotheslined accidentally, by Ron while Slaughter had a hold of me, and then Ron came back and then clotheslined me instead, and I went outside the rings. I never seen little kids at like 9 years old what kind of language they could speak.
Go ahead,
And
Dan. It's all yours, kid.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, it's funny you talk language. I've said before on this show, wrestling fans are a unique breed. I say they are simultaneously the greatest and worst human beings in the world. But,
Manners now. Come on.
well, I want to go expand a little bit. You talk your school, and you and Angela have had a lot of stories. I'm curious, the area that most of these stories take place, the northern New Jersey, Philadelphia, that area, has been from day one of modern wrestling history, even before, kind of a hotbed of people are from there or go
Right.
to there. What is it about that area, do you think, that has bred born and bred so many wrestlers or people who want to wrestle?
I actually don't think it's it might be the area because you have a lot of wrestling fans on the East Coast. And at that time, at least when I was, doing, like I said, the IWCCW and NWA and all that, you had a lot of wrestling on the East Coast. And that's where all the big stars lived. Like you had Bundy, and Snuka, and, even though he was a referee, but the greatest referee that ever lived with Dick Worley with the WWF,
Yep.
And I just think, it kind of, it's, I mean, I'm not going to, it's kind of luck. It's got to be luck too. I mean, it's where you're born, you're there, you know what I mean? And you just happen to stay there, once you train. But a lot of the guys were born on the East Coast,
Okay.
If you really think, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
you really.
It does. It seems. I mean, I grew up. My dad used to tell me the stories when he lived in the neighborhood with Buddy Rogers.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I mean, from day one, growing up with wrestling, it was Buddy Rogers and King Kong Bundy. And I mean, every big name that came through there was either from somewhere within 10 miles. It seemed like everybody I knew growing up was within 10 miles of Camden or 10 miles of Philadelphia. And I mean, not to say that wrestlers aren't from other areas. It just seemed like a real hotbed compared to even other places like, say, Houston or Baltimore, where there seem to be some wrestlers that frequent.
Dan, can I interject something for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
And not to put words in Doc's mouth, and then I'll turn it back over to you. But in answering that question, I think Doc was onto it. But I think the other thing too, and I can speak from both sides of the coin, because I was a fan before I got into business. And I think the fact that, and I think Doc, you'll agree with this, I think the fact that we were exposed to some of the greatest wrestling talent in the world. We had superstar Billy Graham, Pedro, Bruno, Buddy Rogers, Bruiser Brody, Johnny Rods, Davey Yohannan, J.J. Dillon. I mean, we had, you know, some of the best of the best here that lived here. I mean, I live in which they call this Wrestlers Row, okay?
Right.
I had our friend Gino Moore, a promoter, rest his soul, lived 2 blocks away. Kathy Fitzpatrick across the street. King Kong Bundy lived 10 minutes away. Jimmy Snuka lived 15 minutes away. Buddy Rogers lived 20 minutes away. I mean, you're talking about within...
Yeah, Larry Sharpe.
Yeah, Larry Sharpe, another one. Yeah, they all lived within less than a 20-minute drive of where I'm sitting right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, if you think about it, is like beyond remarkable that all of these people lived within like driving distance within a couple of minutes.
And that, what you can add to that is there was a lot of, you know, I mean, even though they were small, but then some were big, you had a lot of promotions on the East Coast, and somebody actually could make a living doing you know, wrestling. You know,
well, we had NWA Jersey, we had Jersey All Pro, we had National Wrestling Superstars. Oh God, Doc. We had Devastation University, Doc's group.
And I had personally had Over the Top NWA. We had WWSA, which was World Wrestling Stars Alliance, and then, like I said, that I had Devastation, you know, Wrestling Federation, but also Devastation University, which I got off of Bundy, King Kong Bundy. I bought back in 2004.
Yeah,
I bought that off of Bundy.
And we also, you know, right over in Philadelphia, of course, we had Dino Santa's group, Worldwide Wrestling Alliance, ECW, Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling, PCW. Oh my God! I mean, Dan, this area was just super rich in wrestling promotions,
and
like Doc said.
Right.
I remember being a kid, being up in that area, and I mean, obviously it was all over the television because you had the local promotions on channel 10 and 13. If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But I mean, going to some of the stores in the area, I'd spend August with my grandparents, and every place that sold anything, there was wrestling merchandise, wrestling videos. It was everywhere.
Now, Doc, you can tell Dan a little bit about this, Doc, because you know you're a little bit older than I am. But tell him about wrestling only a little bit, Doc. You're only a little older than I am. You could tell Dan about the wrestling in Camden at the National Guard Armory.
Oh, yes.
You know, tell him about like some of the, you know, go ahead, Dan. You guys talk.
Well, I had shows.
Go ahead.
A lot of the shows that I had up that way, any shows I did in Camden area, I don't know if you remember DC Drake.
Yep.
Oh my God, sure, yeah.
Well, DC Drake, they used to run the company with the Wild Samoans out of Camden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I worked for them for a long time, and then, like I said, I was the person to go to for midget wrestlers.
That's something. It's funny you mentioned that. That's something else I remember a lot from the local territories on TV growing up. Was there was a lot more midget wrestling in that part of Jersey and Philly than there was, you know, living in Maryland or other parts of the area. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. Dan, that's because of the water, Dan. The water will stunt your growth here.
to go back to what we were talking about with training, something I've been curious about is it's very common in wrestling, especially today with and I know Mike brought it up before in the past with the indie wrestlers, the what's the word? I want to say that the slang term for him is trash bag, but the wrestlers that are obvious just knockoffs of other people.
Right.
I'm curious, but then you also have that through history with, like, say, the Rockers and the Rock and Roll Express, and the idea that Demolition was because Vince couldn't get the Road Warriors. I'm curious, when you talking training, when you have guys that come in and they have this gimmick in mind, or they have this character in mind, and they want to be the next whoever, the next Stone Cold, the next, The Rock, the next Ric Flair. Do you have to train to that, or do you try and train that out of them?
Train that out of them, because I tell them that you got to. When I bring them in the office and talk to them, and they come to me with all these ideas of who they want to be, and this is the character they want to be, and this is before they even stepped in the ring. Mm-hmm. And you got to get that all out of their head. You got to try, and there's just some guys you can't. And there's some guys, like I said, they get there for 2 weeks and they just can't take it. They want to say wrestling's this and wrestling's that. But a lot of guys can't take it. They go through the training for 2 weeks, and I run them through just the bumps and running the ropes, and they want to quit because, they think it's this or that. And, I don't want to say fake, but you know what I mean. They this or that. And then, but then they start taking bumps and then running the ropes. And then like a day later, I see them, or 2 days later, they have a big bruise or rash underneath their arm for running the ropes. Exactly. or damn, doc, my back hurts. Bumps. Like that. Yeah.
Well, you know what, Doc? Doc, to your point, a lot of people, they these young, especially the younger crew. I call them kids, but yeah, they're kids. They see wrestling on television. And they see a guy take a bump. Oh, well, that doesn't look bad, because the ring bounces. It's got give. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. If you take a bump in a training ring, you're going to know you took a bump because your back is going to be sore for a month.
Yep.
Some of the biggest, toughest guys, and Doc will tell you, some of the biggest, toughest guys walked through the Monster Factory. Yeah. They took 1 or 2 bumps and went, oh, my God. Especially when, you or Larry said, hit me with a flat back bump.
Yep.
Okay? You've ever taken a flat back bump? I have. It fucking hurts, okay? It hurts.
And that actually came out during the fallout from the Benoit tragedy when they were talking about the beatings that wrestling takes.
Yeah.
And I think it was the American Medical Society. One of them did a series of tests, and they said a 6-foot man taking a flat back bump in the center of the ring is the equivalent of being seated in a car and being rear-ended at 35 miles an hour. And the average wrestler takes something like 100,000 of them through their career. And they were talking about the long-term, that it's the wear and tear. And that's why, Mikey will tell you, Angela, you guys, same thing. The one word that wrestlers hate more than anything is fake. It might be scripted, but you watch.
We prefer the term work.
Right. But I'm saying is some of these,
work.
moments.
See, here's the thing. I want to, because you brought up something important, and I want to address this, Dan, and then I'll give it back to you. There are 2 F words that we try to stay away from. One of them I use pretty freely on the show. The other one is fake. Mm-hmm. Okay? Here's the thing. Is it fake? No. Is it predetermined? Yeah.
Right.
But there's a difference between being predetermined and fake. How you get from A to Z is up to you. There ain't nothing fake about taking a bump. There ain't nothing fake about getting thrown over the top rope and landing on a concrete floor.
Yeah.
There's nothing fake about getting your head slammed into a turnbuckle with no give, by the way. Despite how it looks, they got no give. And Doc will tell you, because he's taken plenty of them. So
that's why I'm suffering now.
Well, and there's some truth to that, Doc, because look at the guys, our age and look at the guys our age and older.
But not just
Yeah.
that. Look at the guys that dying young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I said the other day. You know, if these guys want to do high spot after high spot, okay. Will you live to be 30? Will you be able to walk when you're 35? Will you remember your name when you're 40? Chances are no on all the above.
Exactly.
Okay. But you got guys from our era that are still around because they knew how to work.
Right.
That's the deal. It's a work, folks. Is it fake? No. Is it a work? Yeah. But these guys know how to work. Go ahead, Dan. I'll shut up.
No, I was saying it, and Doc, you can probably vouch for this too. The history side, you know, having spent years studying the history of wrestling, the original wrestlers were exactly that. They were wrestlers, and they were the best wrestlers. And they realized, you know, two of them talking one day, hey, if we worked together, there's your word, Angelo. If we worked together, neither of us, we could minimize our injuries and make a lot of money. And, you know, one thing led to another. I mean, that's why you had your Vern Gagnes and your Brunos and your Nick Bockwinkel's, who were phenomenal technical wrestlers. And I mean, Vern Gagne, you know, lived to be what, in his 90s, you know, and he was winning. Yeah, he was still packing the crowds in his 50s, and you got some of these guys today taking, you know, super flips, backflips through a stack of light bulbs a couple times a week, are 28 years old and can't work anymore, you know. So to go back to your point, is that another thing that you, I don't want to say maybe beat out of people, for lack of a better term, and you get these guys in who start, you said they have the ideas like, oh, I want to have this, I want to be jumping off ladders, and my finishing move is going to be some big top rope spot. And it's like, you know, do you have to train that out of a lot of people too, do you see?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, because I've been around a lot, like Papa Shanga, you know, he started at the Monster Factory. You know, he put his boots on for the first time. Both pit bulls, Anthony and Gary, both of them were the pit bulls. First time they put their boots on. King Kong Bundy, the first time he put his boots on. You know, guys like that. And
Doc remembers when Bundy had hair.
Yes. Black hair, matter of fact.
Black hair, yeah, he did too.
Larry Sharpe had black hair.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you remember, I used to hang around. Well, I helped him out. Augie, when Augie ran the rings for the WWF. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Grill and Monsoon, and we also used to park the truck, the WWF truck, up there in Willingboro.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife is actually real good friends with Monsoon's daughter.
Okay, yeah. Well,
yeah.
She used to come in all the time. I used to bounce at the old Concord on 38 outside of Mount Holly.
Now, yeah, absolutely. Oh, my God. There's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me ask,
and my wife grew up with the D'Lo Brown, too, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Just as a side note, sidebar. Mike Messier.
Yes.
I'm going to turn it over to you now for the next 15 minutes or so. Go for it.
Okay. Doc, you talk about young King Kong Bundy, and I remember that he actually did preliminary matches. He was kind of an undercard guy, you know, very early in the WWF and early in Bundy's career. I'm talking like 1981, 1980. And I guess as a trainer, as a coach for wrestlers, Doc, do you see wrestlers coming into your life to get trained by you, and you can say, hey, you know what? That wrestler has star quality, but this other wrestler, maybe he's not going to be, or she's going to be a main event player or a main event star, but maybe they'll be a good, you know, enhancement talent or a good undercard talent. And or maybe you see a wrestler and they don't have the physical ability, but they have the mic skills, the mouthing off skills, and you can reassign them as a manager or even a commentator. Is that part of your coaching or training, to be very honest with the students and say, you're a main event player, but you're not. You're a
Well,
preliminary guy, or you're a mid card guy, or you're a manager. Does that ever come up?
yes, a lot. A lot of guys that can't make it as a wrestler, that they'll become a manager, you know, or try to, you know. And as far as Bundy goes, I mean, guys like that just stand out. Just how big they are. I mean, I took Paul Wight over to ECW, and at that time he was wrestling as before. It was Larry Sharpe and me. We went over and took him, and at that time he was wrestling under like a lumberjack kind of gimmick.
Right.
This was the ECW. ECW originally, they turned him down, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "They're going, a guy that big, you got to be able to do something with him." I mean, he only has to know like 5 or 6 moves, if that, in the ring. As big as he was. Same thing with Bundy.
I remember that. And Paul Wight, by the way, is the Big Show.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know that he went through the Monster Factory, and a lot of people don't know that a lot of people turned him down.
Yes.
You know, and Doc, is there a such thing as being too big that you don't know what to do with a guy?
Yeah, because you get too big, then you're clumsy. You can't do anything. And everything you do try to do, I mean, if you don't, like you said, you don't like to use the word fake, but when you can't even get your leg up, or, you know, whatever the situation is, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks
Doc,
nice. It looks nice coming to the ring, but what do you do once you get in there?
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question, Doc, and then I'll give it back to Mikey. When Bundy walked in, and I knew Chris for a long time. When Bundy walked in, he obviously stood out because of his size.
Yes.
Were you surprised when you saw him move?
Yes. That was just, the same thing with like Chief Thunder Mountain and Gary LaJambre, which I managed and got into the business. Gary LaJambre. Terry Funk, when I first met Terry Funk, was up to CYO. And he actually, like, I really didn't know him. I just knew of him. I met him a couple times. And then we got a relationship that I sat down with Gary, one of my big guys. At that time, he weighed over 400 pounds.
Yeah.
And we talked to Terry Funk. Everybody else tried to get him over to Japan for me. I couldn't even do it. Abdul the Butcher couldn't do it. At that time, he was doing the booking. And then Terry took over for doing some bookings for like all New Japan and guys like that. And just having one meeting with Terry, it was just a luck meeting at CYO, and he got Gary over to Japan for me. And that was my first time going to Japan, which was with Gary, one of my guys, Gary LaJambre. Yeah. But at that time, he wrestled as the Texas Terminator, and I called him Big Hoss, and he went through like a cowboy gimmick kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember Chief Thunder Mountain. He was a big dude.
Yes. And not just that.
A big, lovable guy.
Yes.
But, you know, he had a lot of issues, though.
Yes.
Yeah, he had a lot of issues. Well, Chief, if you get a chance to look him up on Google, just Google Chief Thunder Mountain. He was a big, 6'3", 450-pound Italian guy doing the Indian gimmick.
He did have Blackfoot Indian in, believe it or not. It might have been 1%, but he had Blackfoot Indian in him.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I know he had an Italian last name. That's funny. Go ahead, Mikey. Continue.
I guess a follow-up question would be, the last 6 or 7 years, I'll give credit to the NXT training facility for churning out legitimately some great female talent, that the numbers of which we haven't seen in previous wrestling generations, at least as in my experience. Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, Becky Lynch, etc. When you work with women wrestlers, Doc, is there any considerations that they have to be trained differently as far as how they take bumps, their bodies?
Yes, I mean, it is different. It is different, and not trying to be male chauvinistic or anything like that. I mean, they take things differently than what you're going to tell a guy.
Yeah.
You know, they just are. They just are. And I'm not saying you got to handle them with, kid gloves or anything like that. But there's a big difference, and there's a big difference is, like I said, Vince and whoever. I mean, it's popular now, sure, but I mean the reality shows help that Vince is involved with the women and all this kind of diva stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I remember when you couldn't even find a woman on a card, or if you did, there was one match and it didn't last long, and usually one couldn't wrestle at all, and maybe the other one so. But now, then it got to a point that they couldn't wrestle at all. It was just about looks.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get you. They didn't know what a headlock was. From
Terry Runnels versus the Cat at WrestleMania or something like that. Sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
But these days, I guess I'm asking, I'm assuming that you've had some really great female talents come through your doors.
Yes.
As a coach, you want to give them their money's worth and their time's worth to train with you. But as a male coach, because I've been an acting coach, and there's really not much difference between female actors and male actors in that regard. But in wrestling, when it's physical, I'm just wondering, what are some of the exact differences in the nuances of teaching? And maybe you have to explain to the women, like, hey, I'm not being sexist. I'm just trying to help you get the most out of being here without getting injured. That's what I'm curious about.
I mean, it comes down, especially now. I mean, it comes down to sex, not with that person. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's all about sex,
right?
How they look in the ring. Okay, but actually now, both of the women that are in the ring actually can wrestle.
Right.
That's a big difference than years ago, or they actually can wrestle. It isn't just a beauty contest like it was.
You know what, Doc? Can I ask you a question about that? And Mike, I'm sorry, I'm just going to chime in here. Let me ask you about that. The WWE and AEW now, they have these wrestlers that look more like beauty queens than wrestlers.
Right.
When you and I grew up, we had people like
Moolah,
Joyce Grable, Ann Casey, Donna Christinello. They were tough women.
Yes, they were.
They weren't the most beautiful creatures in the world, but they could work their ass off, really. When you get a woman that comes in like Amy Lee or Casey Carlisle, somebody like that who's, let's be honest, Amy's a great wrestler, but she's not the prettiest thing to look at.
And well, she's a friend of mine, so
but she's one of the boys,
Yeah, you're right there.
Exactly. So how do you, when somebody like Amy's a big girl, right? And she's tough. Tough cookie.
Yeah.
Now, do you train Amy differently than you would train somebody like Sasha Banks or somebody like that?
Oh, sure. I mean, you're going to have to. Like I said, if you don't have the looks, like that's what I mean. Amy went with the brawling situation. It was a brawl, not wrestling.
Yeah.
It was brawling, not wrestling. And a lot of the guys, even though like I managed Bad Attitude, and they were two big guys, they were 400 pounds plus each, and they were brothers, and nobody could tell them. They thought, everybody thought they were twins when they're in the ring. They couldn't tell each other, from who was who when they got in the ring.
Yeah.
But one was a brawler, which was Dave, which just passed away. And then Darren passed away a couple of years ago. But to get back to Amy, like I said, she's a great friend and, all that stuff. But, like everybody in this business, like me and Anzo were talking about Gino. And everybody wants to talk behind somebody's back when they, or talk on the computer when somebody's dead.
Right.
And can't talk back. They keep their mouth shut you know, while the person's alive. But when he dies, all of a sudden, all this stuff comes up about somebody. And I'm not just talking about Gino, anybody. And I've shut everybody up when I've got on there. I got them at the end apologizing to me because like the Rock and Rebel, because I was telling Angelo, you know, about the other situation, about Benoit, and nobody knows except the two people that were there. Everybody wants to have all conspiracies about things, like with Rock and Roll Rebel. You know, I started him in the business, just like Johnny Casimir and Trent Acid and guys like that. I started them in the business. They started in the business when they were 16 years old. I had their fathers sign for them to wrestle, you know, for me to train them, you know. But I'm the only one that would give him a chance. Just like Trent towards the end, you know, I gave him a chance. You know, I mean, I signed for him, Department of Correction. Yeah. For him to come work for me because he wanted to get out of the house. He was on lockdown in the home. You know, what do you call it?
House arrest.
House arrest.
Correct. Correct. You know, my Alzheimer's kicking in right then, and I said, and I had to lie. I had to lie to the Department of Corrections, and I loved this guy. Trent Acid, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I had to lie to the Department of Corrections because I was doing the guy a favor because he can get out of the house and tell me he was working at my gym. And then I would get a phone call, well, where is he at? And then I'd have to say, well, he's doing this for me, that for me. And then, you know, then I'm answering to the Department of Corrections and get myself in trouble. Yeah. You know, when I'm not there. That's what I'm trying to say. He's not there, and I have no idea where he's at. But, you know, he wasn't. I just didn't get him in the business. He became a friend too. Just like Johnny Cash. They don't know the story. Nobody knows the story. Had all these like Z-Bar and these guys that worked for ECW at the time. Oh, they're getting on Facebook and saying all this stuff that I robbed Johnny Casimir and all this kind of stuff, or I did this, I did that. Johnny Casimir. You don't. I said you don't know what conversation me and Johnny Casimir had. Right. But you don't know what he called me. And I wouldn't answer the phone. And he called me and kept going on and on. Listen, because he was at that time he was talking to my wife at the time, and he said, "Listen," because I didn't want to talk to him. And he says, "Tell Doc I respect him, this and that. I want to talk to him. Please tell him I'll talk to him." And I kept hanging up on him. Finally, you know, and then finally when I did talk to him, you know, two people screaming on each end of the phone, you can't get nothing done. Yeah. Okay. And finally, I talked to him, and he said, you know, listen, let's not, you know, scream and yell and all this, call each other names, this and that. And finally, I got talking to him, and he said, listen, Doc, what can I do for you? Because I respect you. What can I do for you to make us, you know, even, you know, as far as not knowing each other and even on things? Because, like I said, the Z-Bars and people have never done anything in wrestling. Yeah. You know, and stuff like that. You know, they had all this crap to say about me because I supposedly ripped him out. No, Johnny Casimir walked away after it was either the second or third match, which we did at the skate zone, the Flyer skate zone. Why would you're doing the promotion, why would you walk out after the second or third match when you had Diamond Dallas Page there on the card that I'm paying for, Nikolai Volkov? You know, I can go on with the names, but he disappears. And then I'm not supposed to think that there's money missing at the front, you know, at the at the box.
Well, I got to jump.
Well, that's a story. That's a story, Doc, for another day. But
yeah, why don't you get in? I'm just going to say that, you know, some of these names that you're talking about, I remember from Combat Zone Wrestling in particular, which wasn't too far from you guys up there in the New Jersey area. Combat Zone kind of came in at the end of the original ECW era, and Combat Zone helped fill that void. But this brings me to my next question real quick, and then I'll hand it over to Dan and Angelo, which is some of this, you know, brutal death wrestling, Nick Mondo Cage, and guys like that who've made a living somehow, at least I hope they have, doing the weed whackers to the stomach and doing the jumping off a building into a barbed wire table. This cult of underground backyard stuff. Doc, as a teacher, as an instructor, do you ever see young talent who's interested in that type of wrestling? And if they come to you with that type of wrestling in mind, what is your response to that?
Well, the matter of fact, you're gonna recognize the name I say, Matt Tremont.
Yeah.
Okay. He started in my school, and then he continued to come to my school. And that's the first thing I had to tell him, because that's all he would call me up on the phone. He said, Doc, I got this idea. Or when I'd be at the school, he wanted to do the hardcore stuff. And I said, kid, you don't have to do the hardcore stuff. Matt can wrestle. He doesn't have to be hitting you with light bulbs and hitting you with a ladder or a trash can lid or something like that. That's for people that can't work.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yes.
You know, that's what it comes down to. You can't work, so you got to hit somebody with a trash can lid, or, you know, and bleeding all over the place. And, you know,
Absolutely.
that was my saying to him, listen, Matt, you don't have to do this stuff. And not just that, what's he going to look like 4 or 5 years from now?
Right.
After doing all that damage to yourself, falling from a, 10-foot or 15-foot ladder or out of a balcony, like the ECW, falling out of a balcony and stuff like that. What kind of shape are you going to be in? Yeah, you're going to be, seeing a doctor very often.
Yeah.
And your wrestling career is going to be short, or you're going to be hooked on something, alcohol, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because you want to do this silly stuff because you can't work and can't wrestle.
Doc,
And
as an outsider looking in, sometimes I worry that these kind of underground deathmatch wrestlers have some type of, I don't want to say suicidal streak, but a nihilism to themselves, that they want to injure their own bodies for the sake of whatever. And it just seems to me that you're a very well-grounded guy. You see pro wrestling for what it was and what it should continue to be. Working people for entertainment, but having a level of respect for the business. And I'm just glad that there's trainers like yourself who are still out there trying to teach these kids. They don't have to jump into barbed wire, or they don't have to do a Joey Ryan routine in order to get over.
Right. You don't have to do like a staple gun to the head and stuff like that. Yeah.
Necro butcher type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, to me, it's not entertaining. Oh yeah, it's just like watching a car crash.
Right.
Everybody turns and they hold up traffic and they look. It's the same thing. I think it's a trend or fad, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and Doc, and 5 minutes later, you forgot all about it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who did what, or who did what to
exactly.
who? Or unless, oh, did you see that guy, dump that car engine on top of the other guy? I remember something like that.
Remember, we can all remember, Bruno and Ivan Koloff. We all remember Bruno and Superstar Graham. We remember, Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik. You can't remember anything these guys did because it's so forgettable. Nobody cares. Dan, you got the last round of questions, brother, and then we're going to take it home.
Well, I was just about to say like you mentioned, 100 years from now, wrestling fans will still be watching the tape of Flair and Dusty Rhodes in the cage. And, I couldn't tell you, probably 6 months from now, somebody like a Joey Ryan will be a footnote. Do you remember this one loser who people don't remember? But we are nearing the end, so I do want to wrap it up. I have one final question for you. You've been teaching and you've been working with wrestling for a long time, so putting you on the spot here. Who was your favorite student you've ever had?
Favorite student ever had? Bam Bam Bigalow.
Good as answer as any.
Yep. And Bam Bam was a big guy who could work.
Pound for pound, one of the best big men in the business.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, he sure was too.
I got to meet him once.
And a heart of gold. He had a heart of gold.
Yeah.
He's a real nice guy. I met him in the summer of '96
Yeah.
at a local show in Cumberland, Rhode Island, and he was a great guy to meet for just 5 or 10 minutes.
Mikey, you want to tell Doc that story about running into Larry Sharpe down in Baltimore?
Yeah, Doc, you're gonna love this story. As a young child, I went to the 1989 Great American Bash in Baltimore, the pay-per-view, Flair vs. Funk, and me and my buddies were walking around the Inner Harbor, going to the wrestling show, the Baltimore Arena, and we're about 3 hours before the doors open, and we see this big African American guy with a white shirt and no sleeves and suspenders, and he's with a guy that I did recognize in a suit with the blonde hair and the sunglasses.
The
Playboy
blue suit?
Larry Sharpe. I thought it was brown in my memory, but
Okay.
But it was a sport coat, and it was Larry Sharpe. And this is July 23rd, 1989, to be exact, because it's the day of the pay-per-view. And I recognize Larry Sharpe because of his pictures with Bam Bam Bigalow in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the aftermags. And I go up to these guys, and I said, "You're Larry Sharpe, the trainer?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I pointed to the guy with him, who was Charles Wright, and he wasn't Papa Shango yet. And I said, "Is this guy going to wrestle tonight?" And Larry said, "We hope so." I asked him if I could take a picture. This is way before cell phone cameras. This is old school 35 millimeter, camera. I took a picture of these two guys, Larry Sharpe and Charles Wright, Papa Shango, the Godfather. And I took the picture. I kept it all those years. And then in 2013, I went to a wrestling convention, Joe Bruin's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Joe is actually in the picture with Paul Orndorff on the beginning of this show, Wrestling with the Future. And I went up to Charles Wright with a photo replication of this picture with him and Larry Sharpe. And I said, "I took this of you back in 1989, and this is 2013. And I gave the Godfather, Papa Shango, Charles Wright, the Soul Taker, a picture of himself with his trainer from all those years back, and he really appreciated it." So that was just one of those things where wrestling fans never forget. And it was just a classy thing of Larry Sharpe and Charles to take the picture, and I was happy to bring Charles that photograph so many years later.
Yeah, that's funny you said that, because you took the words right. When you said the Soul Taker, that was his first name you had out of the Monster Factory.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
I remember when he was there, Doc. Larry used to take the boys to my father's bar in Camden. They used to, after all the matches, they used to come, because Larry was a good friend of the family, knew me and my father. And, of course, we all knew Dennis. Everybody knew Dennis because he was always coming in for a free meal, And Larry introduced him as Bear the Soul Taker. Remember?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that was the first introduction that I had to Charles Wright, the Godfather.
Many nights I was with Larry, and came out of that bar not remembering how I got home.
Yeah.
So
I know. Oh, brother, let me tell you, we used to have a lot of fun. We had the right kind of fun, though. Yeah, well, I've gotten drunk with the best in the business. Junkyard Dog and Bob Orton.
Yes.
And both of the Samoans, Afa and Sika, and Samu and Fatu, and Stan Hansen and Kamala. I'm gonna tell you something. I drank with all of them.
Nice.
I drank with all of them, and they could drink, brother. Let me tell you something. They could and eat and drink, and they were great guys, and they all of them were fun to be with, and they all had hearts of gold.
Yes, it did.
Speaking of hearts of gold, you have been incredibly generous with your time tonight, Doc. I got to have you back for part 2.
Yes, but the honor's mine. Believe me, Angelo, Mike, and Dan. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
We've done an hour and a half tonight, and I want to tell you what, it just blew by. It really did.
Sure did.
So, Dan, we're going to wrap it out. Doc, before we go, we always like to tell people where they can get a hold of you. So, can people reach you on Facebook?
Yes, they can. Facebook. This you can punch in Doc Diamond, and my real name comes up, of course. But there's like 30 years, but there's some guys that have known me for 30 years thought my real name was Doc Diamond.
Yeah.
I never used my real name. Only people that were real close to me knew my real name.
Yeah.
But Facebook.
Yep. Just Facebook. Just search Doc Diamond, and he will come up.
Yes, it'll be under my real name, but you'll see me there. And of course, in my beautiful blonde hair. And then,
the pictures I have behind me.
Yes.
Dan, what do we got, Dan?
Well, Mike, you want to
everybody our plug, our merch, all that stuff.
I'm gonna say, Mike, you want to do your plugs first, and we'll wrap up with the program.
Sure. Well, people should be checking out. If they're listening to this, make sure you go to Facebook, if you're on Facebook, and request to get into the Wrestling with the Future private Facebook group. There's also a public page, but we want to request everyone join our private group. Go to YouTube, help us out, because we've got a lot of good content there on the Wrestling with the Future podcast YouTube page. And what you can do is you can get in there, you can sign up, you can subscribe, and hit the alarm button so you get notified when new content comes out.
Yep.
So that's a great way to be in touch with us. As far as myself, I'm doing life lessons with Mikey Messier on the Wrestling with the Future podcast channel, MikeMessier.com. I'm working on screenplays and having a good time.
And Dan,
as for us, we're Wrestling with the Future is on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter at Wrestling Future, no G, Wrestling Future. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and buy the T-shirt.
I gotta get you one, Doc. I'm gonna have to send you one out.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it. I'll send you one of mine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, for Dan the Man Sebastiano. And you can reach Dan at @theman_WWTF on Twitter, and hit him up on Facebook. It's Dan Sebastiano. If you type in Dan the Man, you may get somebody else. Just put in Dan Sebastiano. So, just look for the hat. Just look for the hat. He's real easy to find. The sideburns and the hat.
Right.
And, of course, MikeMessier.com for all your wants, needs, and Messier desires.
Yeah.
MikeMessier.com.
Yeah.
Doc Diamond is at Doc Diamond on Facebook. And you can find me on Facebook.com/Wrestling with the Future. You can sign up for our psychic page. That's Psychic Angelo on Facebook. Easy enough to find. And if you want to hit me up as a friend, it's Angelo DeCipio on Facebook. So, for Doc Diamond, for Dan the Man, and Mike Messier, I am Psychic Medium Angelo. Happy wrestling, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, gentlemen.